Hello and good morning, Mr. Davis Miller. How you doing today?
Life's good. I'm having a fine time. You're in Charlotte. You're only a few miles from me. I'm in Asheville.
Oh my God. I was going to ask you if you were still up there in Winston-Salem.
So you know my history. I'm often in Winston. My kids still live there, and I have a daughter there and a lot of friends. But I moved to Asheville. Here's something I usually don't tell people. I was kidnapped in Hong Kong while on a magazine assignment. And when I escaped that, and I'm writing about that presently and probably going to develop that into a podcast too. But when I managed to get out of Hong Kong, I always wanted to live in Asheville, and I got up here and kind of disappeared for a while, went undercover and was living off the grid. And I miss Winston and I miss a lot of friends there, but Asheville's a beautiful place.
Oh my God.
And I'm an outdoor guy, so I hike most days and play all over the place.
And those mountains right there, I mean, it's just amazing to be able to escape out there because, I mean, I swear those mountains are still very much alive. As ancient as they are, they still have a voice.
Yes, indeed, they do. And I'm distinctly aware of that voice. You know, I hike most days, probably about 2 hours a day. It's a great place to live, to write too. Wow. And just finished a novel that's set in downtown Asheville, and darn happy about this podcast. It's a retelling of the stories from my book, The Tao of Muhammad Ali, which has been a #1 international bestseller and kind of a cult classic. And we're hoping to move it to a feature film. And really, the podcast is not a traditional podcast in any sense. It's deeply immersive, and it's sort of a sound movie that pertains to the innumerable ways that Ali saved my life.
Yeah.
He's done it time and again. We became friends in the late 80s, and where a lot of people at that time were regarding him as sad and beaten up and punch drunk, he was anything but. He had Parkinson's disease. Yeah. And I think became a more remarkable man in the second half of his life than he was in the first half. And most people don't know the stories of the second half of his life. And those are the ones that we're sharing with our guests as well, and their own experiences of the ways that Ali transformed their lives in the second half of Ali's own life. And having a blast with the podcast. And I think we're doing some things that have never been done before, not only about Ali, but got a real taste on my friendship with Ali too, that was commissioned by the Washington National Opera. And the composer of that, DJ Spar,
yes,
he composed the music for the podcast as well. So I think it's a very unusual piece of work, and I think has enormous crossover appeal. And I hope you'll give it a listen and have some fun with it.
Well, it's more than just a listen. It's an experience, because I've been a part of that experience in the way that you have taken everything that really was going wrong in your life, and even you questioned it. How did I even become the author of books when everything that I did in school, right? Come on. Everything that you did in school was because you wanted to be one of the cool kids, and the cool kids are stupid.
Well, indeed, that was true at Mount Tabor High School in Winston-Salem, and also at Reynolds High School. I went to 2 high schools. I graduated third from the bottom, about 1,500 kids in 1972 at Reynolds, and I flunked English 4 years in a row. Yeah. The only thing I cared about at the time was being an Ali fan, and despite having flunked English all those years, I became a writer, and I hope a pretty good one.
Yeah. Well, your storytelling
ability, because of my man Ali.
Well, your storytelling abilities is amazing, because what happens is that I'm impressed with the attention span, because even in the first episode, now that's where I want listeners to begin it. Don't start it when you first get it on iHeart. You have to go all the way back to the beginning and get the story, because the way you break it up, and because you set it up, and then all of a sudden, in the same episode, you go into talking with another world champion.
Indeed, I do. My pal, James Buster Douglas,
Yes.
and and James and I have kind of a little bit of history together too. On the night that he knocked out Tyson, who Ali at the time called the Brat,
Yeah.
I was in sleep. I was asleep in bed. I mean, I knew the fight was taking place in Tokyo, but did not necessarily expect James to win. And I worked out of my study upstairs, and the phone started ringing upstairs back in the days when it was all landlines. And my phone's ringing beside the bed and kept going and going and going. And eventually I rolled over and answered it. And it was my brother-in-law who said, Douglas just knocked out Tyson. And then I turned to my wife and I said, Douglas just knocked out the Brat, because I was hanging out with Ali, and that's what Ali called him. And she said, "Who's the Brat?" And I ran upstairs and started playing back the messages on my voicemail. And the third or fourth one, I heard this voice, and the voice said, "They still going to compare Tyson to me now?" And it was, of course, Muhammad. And my great pal, I tear up when I talk about him. Maybe the world's most generous human being. He loved people. He loved hanging out with people. And I'm enormously fortunate to have spent the hundreds of hours I spent with him and been, I guess, one of his intimates. And, I'm enormously pleased to share these stories. And I believe they're going to light people up and surprise people in quite a few ways.
When you talked about how the Brat came into being, I felt guilty because I was one of those people that really thought that Mike Tyson was going to go on to be better than Muhammad Ali. And then so when we come to that part of the story, I went, oh my God, that really hit me in the heart, because I look at me, I was wrong. And but at the same time, when you were living those moments, I had Ali as a kid and I had a Tyson as an adult. I mean, it was a battle between the two personalities.
They were, it's sort of interesting. Could there have ever been a Mike Tyson had there not been Muhammad Ali, and all that outlandishness that Ali had too? I mean, distinctly different people as athletes, as boxers, but also as human beings. Ali being so quick and his voice being so lyrical and witty and kind and available to people, and Mike being difficult. Mm-hmm. And that's a bit of an understatement, but being so explosive. I sat ringside at several of his fights, and when you're sitting 10 feet, 15 feet away from Tyson in the ring, I just get a cockroach of sweat crawling down my back. He just made you tremble all over. Ali, very different soul, very different personality, but at the same time, Ali was also Tyson's all-time hero.
Yeah.
As he is for Bill Clinton, as he is for Barack Obama, as he was for Nelson Mandela. And I don't think arguably at all, Ali was the most famous and admired man in the world. And I think as long as there are human beings, and I don't know if that's 5 years more of us or 50 years or 50,000 years, I think the name Muhammad Ali will be known and his life will be celebrated.
You and I have something in common, and it's that martial arts background. And I laughed like a child when you talked about how you emulated Muhammad Ali. And if you could see me fight when I was in my Taekwondo tournaments, it was because I wanted to move my feet like Muhammad Ali. And you know what, though? It got me on the inside, dude, so I could score the points. Those feet are so important.
Indeed. I was sort of the same thing in the martial arts background. I was, when I was endeavor in my late teens and early 20s, I was very fortunate because my hands were better than other guys because of being an Ali fan. I had boxing hands and I could dance like Ali. I had very similar movement. And, guys back in the early 70s in martial art, they didn't move like that.
Right.
And, so I could catch guys pretty quickly. They didn't even know what a jab was. And, it was pretty easy to be successful in that world, emulating Ali. Bruce Lee was another guy who was a huge Ali fan. He considered Ali his number one hero. When you're watching Bruce Lee's films, a lot of times he's doing Ali moves. And he used to watch films of Bruce Lee was a southpaw. Mm-hmm. He led with his right hand and right foot. And he would show Ali films, watch them through a mirror so that he could replicate Ali's moves.
The whole entire story that you've got here, and I'm so glad that you've put this podcast together. 8 episodes is not enough, but I just know there's going to be more. But the thing is that you're showcasing something that was hidden away from us, because once Ali disappeared from the ring, then all we had were the memories, and so you're giving us that one side of him that we didn't get to know, and to go through it is so emotional, because all we got were little snippets in a magazine, or maybe even on Wide World of Sports we might hear something.
Yeah, and people regarded his life as being sad.
Yeah.
And him being somehow less than who he had been before. And that just wasn't true. In some ways, in many ways, in most ways, he was made wise by his Parkinson's, and he considered it to be his gift from God. One of the things that his daughter Rasheda told me that we include in the finale, the 8th episode of the podcast, is that her dad, when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, said, "Now my life has begun." And the guy was just straight up transcendent. He was irrepressible. You could not keep him down. People know that about the first half of his life, but they don't know that about the second half. And I'm pleased to share those stories. It's an honor to share those stories. And I think we're going to really light some people up. And I'm glad that you've enjoyed the podcast. It means a lot to me.
What has this experience been like for you? Because, here we are in this moment of now where people are going to receive not only the book, but they're also going to get the podcast.
It's interesting. The book has been a kind of a cult favorite. And, I hear from people all the time about how it's changed their lives, particularly in the UK, where it's been celebrated. And as Ali was, he was far more popular in the UK than he was in the US early on. And they understood him when he was reviled in the US. And it's been quite an adventure over just decades and decades. And this sounds pretentious, and I don't think I've ever said this aloud before, but I hope that I've written something that's genuinely timeless.
Yeah.
And with universal appeal, and I feel that may be even at least as true of the podcast as it is the book. And I sort of would like to pretend that Ali is a genuinely mythological figure. That's not a pretense, but that I'm his Homer. I'm bringing Muhammad Ali's Iliad and Odyssey to the world. It's I get very emotional about it sometime. We're wrapping up the show now and doing the last couple of episodes of what may be a first season. Mm-hmm. And it's been tough, because it's not only about Ali, it's about the death of my mom, mm-hmm. my marriages, my children, a divorce, the death of Muhammad, the death of my dad, and the title, The Tao of Muhammad Ali. Just look at that as the Chinese word Tao means way.
Yep.
It's I follow in the path of Ali in some respects, and also reveal the ways that he moved through the world that most people don't know. And it is cathartic in some ways to do this. In other ways, it's like running around wearing my underwear on top of my head. But generally, I'm having a blast with it. And I'm very pleased that you are enjoying it and are connecting with it. And I hope that millions of people will.
One of the things that it's to maybe many listeners, they're not going to understand this, but I think you as a martial artist and you being that close to Muhammad Ali, people who put themselves in rings like that learn to observe life from afar. In other words, we see things so far out there that when it comes to us, we are prepared for it. And so, but when we prepare for it, that means we're going to change our community in a way so they too can become prepared for it.
That's interesting. I think that, martial art made me far more observant than I think I otherwise would have been. And in addition to which, the discipline it took to turn into a pretty good fighter, a pretty good martial artist, allowed me to become a writer as well. I was used to throwing 1,000 kicks a day, 2,000 punches a day. So to sit down and do rewrite after rewrite, to make a story lyrical, to make it sing, to make every word count, was not as difficult for me as it would have been for someone who hadn't had that experience, I think. I'm very grateful for the life I had in martial art. Well, though at the same time, I'm also glad to have left it. Yeah. I didn't need to get beaten up anymore. It's just, I'm a little four-eyed, pointed-nosed, no chin, long neck, skinny white guy. And I didn't like getting hurt, and I didn't like hurting people. I just like to look. My A guys are coming from a different place altogether. That's some rough individuals.
Yeah, because they sure don't teach us in martial arts that kicking those body bags and things like that would be filled with lots of pain in your 60s. And you're going, oh my God, why do my legs and my arms still hurt?
Absolutely true. I've had a hip replacement because of it. And, at the same time, I'm a lot younger than my years, maybe because of it too, though my bones are not. I'm still a big kid. And Ali is a lot of that. I mean, Ali was this wonderful cosmic child, even a cosmic brat. And, like to pick up the rug of the universe and shake it and see what was under there, and to cause trouble with it, and and I guess I do that in my writing in some ways too.
Yeah. One of the things that, and I do pat you on the back for doing this. This is the first time that I've ever read something or heard something that embraces the spirit of Ali in the way of being calm and at peace. Because, when he became Muslim, we didn't understand what that was. We didn't know how do you go from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. We didn't know anything. And yet here was this guy with all this confidence and all of this courage. And it's like, where is the peace? Oh, he found it. And you know what? I swear, Davis, you're the first one I've ever heard that's talking about it.
Thank you, Arrow. I think I'm doing things that haven't been done. Yeah. And I think I'm doing it on every page of the book, and I think I'm doing it, I hope, in every line in the podcast. And I don't know if I said this earlier in your show or not, but one of the ways I think of the podcast is as a sound movie. Yes. It's deeply immersive. A lot of music, a lot of sound effects. We want to take every listener on a journey, deeply inside Ali's life, deeply inside my life, and perhaps show them a larger world that they may or may not have seen.
Yeah. Rasheda's very honest when she says that her father was basically Peter Pan. He never grew up.
That is absolutely true. The first, as you know, but our listeners here don't. The very first night I was hanging out with him at his mom's, and I was a video store manager. I was just blown away to even be there at the time, and he invited me into dinner. And we ate these giant bowls of chili, and after I felt like I needed to retire to the bathroom. I get in there and do whatever it is I do, and I reach over to unlock the door, and it is unlocked, but I can't open it.
No.
I can't even budge it. and I'm in there 30 seconds, tugging on the door, getting more and more and more embarrassed. And I hear Ali's mom snickering from outside the door. I hear his brother laughing, Rahman. And then I hear Ali laughing. And then suddenly Ali opens the door. He'd been holding the knob to keep me in there. He pulls me out of the bathroom, gently tosses me onto the floor, and gets on top of me and starts tickling me. Yeah. And I'm laughing like a kid. At the time I was 35 years old, and I'm laughing like a kid. And I realized, and Ali's laughing, and his family's laughing. And I recognize that Ali hasn't lost his greatest talent, his highest talent, the ability to move people past thoughts and words to a world of feeling and play. Ali, the great cosmic child.
Oh my God, Davis. My God, what a great way to end this episode, because that just explains the whole entire podcast and the book. And I'll bet you more listeners will go to the podcast first and then go to the book, because when you have the book, you're getting your own interpretation and your own emotions are so involved because their mind is speaking to them and it's not necessarily your voice.
Thank you. I do come across, I hope, as some sort of everyman in the book and in the show, hanging out with Superman.
Yeah.
And Superman in retirement. And thank you. Thank you. You get the book.
I do.
And you get the show, and I appreciate that.
I do. You got to come back to this show anytime in the future, Davis. I mean, you're up there in Asheville. I'm in Charlotte. We can meet somewhere in the middle, maybe in Hickory.
Yeah, maybe we meet in Hickory and eat some Japanese food.
There you go. Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
You too, sir. I greatly appreciate it, Arrow. You were fun.